Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Jessica McDonald. I'm a knitting pattern designer, if you don't already know that. I am going to be filming a little bit of a different video for you. This isn't a tutorial, this isn't one of my usual knitting podcasts. I am starting something new that I've not done before, so I decided to just film little snippets of video as I go along, and then at the end just edit them all together into one big video focusing entirely on this one project because it's something new. It's something I've never done before. It's really fun, it's exciting, but since it's my first time, I thought it'd be fun to just make a video every single day or every couple of days while I'm working on it, and then I can share the whole thing with you at the end, and you can just kind of be here for the whole process of it and walk the whole way with me every step of the way. So today's May 31st. Hopefully this video goes out not too terribly long from now. Yes, it's May 31st. I'm wearing a very cozy wool sweater on the last day of May in the Northern Hemisphere. It's been cold. We had a snowy weekend and woke up to, well, a stormy weekend, and we woke up to the clouds covered in snow. So let me move this so you don't see the strap. Anyway, the project I'm working on is the Snowy Shawl. This is how far it is so far. Does that look fantastic? It's just the beginning of it. So this is one of the accessories in the Forest collection, which will be coming out as a book later this year. Sign up for my newsletter at the link below if you don't want to miss it. But anyway, this is being designed to go along with the snowy hat, which you can see here. The snowy hat and the snowy mittens. I don't know where the other mitten is. It grew legs. This has been worn quite a bit by Talia, but you can see the snowflakes in the gray section falling on this lovely little forest of trees. And the same thing is going on in the hat. Got snowflakes falling on the forest. So this shawl is designed to coordinate with the hat and the mittens, so you can have a matching set if you would like. So all of these use worsted weight yarn. The one I'm using is Durham Natura Gilead in the colors Forite, and then the gray is Goland and the white is Bolio. So all three of them use the same color. So yeah. This is how far I am. I wanted to design a colorwork shawl to go in this collection. Well, I didn't want to design another cowl because in Woodland Ramble, which here's Woodland Ramble, it has these two included. You can also get them as individual patterns on Ravelry. But I wanted to design an accessory that goes along with these, but I didn't want to do a cowl because I did a cowl in Woodland Ramble. So I wanted to do something different, which would mean like a scarf, but if I made a colorwork scarf, it would have to be knit in a tube in worsted weight yarn in colorwork. I mean, it would be like a third of an inch thick. Like, it would be seriously thick. So I thought I would do a shawl, a colorwork shawl, which is something that I have never done before. Excuse me. Not only have I not done a colorwork shawl before, but I'm not really a shawl knitter. Like, in the whole grand scheme of my knitting journey, I have knit a grand total of one single shawl, and that was years and years and years ago. It's a crescent shaped shawl. I would knit it in the middle of the night when my oldest was a baby and she wasn't sleeping. So she's almost 9, so it was a really long time ago. So this is my second ever shawl, my first ever shawl design, and it's colorwork and it's going to be steeked. So there's a lot of new things going on here. So it's fun, it's exciting, just all of the learning that goes into designing this has been really fun. I've spent a lot of time looking up shawl construction and how to increase, where to increase, all kinds of stuff. So yesterday I sat down and finally charted up all the colors and wrote out the pattern, and cast it on. I am to there. So one of the things I really struggled with on this project was figuring out how big to make it, because calculating the size of a shawl is kind of hard. I'm gonna sketch it out for you. So it's a top-down triangle shawl, like so. So you start here, and then you knit out this way, and you knit out this way. Well, all of these stitches here are at an angle. All of these stitches here are at an angle. All of these stitches here are at an angle. So you can't just say, okay, I have so many rows and my row gauge is this, and so this wingspan will be this big, because all of the stitches are at an angle, so they're not going to match my row gauge. The only place I can get an accurate measurement based off of gauge is here, these bottom sections here, because you know the stitches come out and so they're just straight flat against this edge. So I could calculate the size of these two edges, but then I couldn't calculate the wingspan or the depth because I don't know what any of the angles are. So I was just kind of lost and hopeless. I'm like, I have no idea how big to make this thing. So I looked at another shawl pattern that I have. I do just buy patterns that I like. So I had one in my library. So I looked at it, and it's a DK weight shawl. It has around 100 rows. I think it's a little bit over 100 rows in it. So I thought, okay, if I make this right around 100 rows, it's probably going to end up a reasonable shawl size. So that's the ballpark I was aiming for, with about 100 rows. I think there'll be 113. I think there's 113 total rows in this. So it should be a good size shawl. Hopefully it's not too big, but what I'm really, really terrified of is that I'll get down to the bottom and I'll bind off and I'll just have a little kerchief. So that's one thing that I'm really nervous about is the size, because I have no way of getting a good size calculation. I have no way of knowing how big it's going to be when it's done. When I design a sweater, I do all of the math and all of the grading, so I know when I get to the end, this is exactly how big it's going to be. But with this, I have no idea. I have no idea at all how big this is going to be. It could be enormous. It could be tiny. I don't know. Given the round 100 row benchmark, I think it should be a good shawl size, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So this is a colorwork shawl knit in the round. You can see it's all knit in the round, and then when I am done, I will steek it along here. These are the steek stitches here. You can kind of see them. Hopefully that straight panel going up and down, that's the steek. Cut it right up the center of that, and then I will make a tidy edge along the top, because that's going to be the top, the wingspan. So this is the wingspan along here, along where it's steeked, and then around over here is the center spine. So I started out in gray, and there's 4 sections, not including the hem, so there's 4 charts. So started out with the gray, and you can see the snowflakes there in the gray, and it's falling on this little group of trees. And then I've just started the transitional piece, and then it's going to move into a background of the green, the dark green, with snowflakes on it. It's going to be slightly larger than this section here, the gray section with snowflakes. It has, I think, 1 extra row of the snowflakes in it as compared to this section here. And then there is a big section right before you get to the hem of bigger trees and more snow, and just a big kind of dramatic centerpiece of the shawl. And then you switch to ribbing and you finish the shawl with ribbing, just 2x2 ribbing. Yeah, so this is how far I am. I started it last night. It starts with a tab cast on, so I didn't, like a garter stitch tab shawl, but I didn't do garter stitch, I did stockinette. You can see the stockinette tab right there. So I started with a stockinette tab and then picked up stitches for the actual body of the shawl and then cast on the stitches for the steek. So we are in the round there. It was really fiddly at first because you can see it's really tiny there to start in the round there. So it's really fiddly right there, but pretty quickly it grows to a decent shape where it's easy enough to work. I've worked this whole thing magic loop style, which you can see my needles. I do still need to do a tutorial on how to do magic loop, but anyway, so I have done the increases on this shawl at a little bit different rate. So you have this is the wingspan here, the top of the shawl. On every single round, you will increase along this edge, and then every other round, you increase along the center spine. With a normal, a lot of people do it this way now, but it used to be that on a triangle shaped shawl, you would increase every other row, both along the top wingspan and in the center. So you had perfectly equal triangles, and that gave you a shawl that grew in depth just as quickly as it grew in length. So if you wanted a nice wide shawl, it was also going to be really deep in the back. But if you switch up the rate of increases and you increase more quickly along the top edge, the wingspan edge, then it grows in length faster than it grows in depth. So you can get a nice wide shawl that's not hugely overly deep. So that's why I'm doing it this way. You can see it wants to curve. It really wants to curve. Let me see if I can show this to you. So you can see it really wants to curve to make those stitches lay smooth because you're increasing at such a quick rate along there. So that's going to make it curve around this way. So it will just curve around my shoulders and around the front. So it will follow the path, like the fabric will be naturally inclined to follow the path you would arrange the fabric as you're putting on a shawl. So I think that'll make it a little more stable as you wear it because it wants to go that way anyway. So yeah, that's my hope anyway, given that I have made all of one shawl. I did spend a lot of time researching shawl construction and increases and best practices, so should be good. So we're on to, I'm a little bit worried that this group of trees is too close to the top, but I had to consider the whole shawl, not just these trees. And since I'm only working with about 100 rows, they had to be close to the top because I wanted this section and the next snowflake section to be roughly the same size. And then I got the big hem section. So that kind of bumped this section up here. So it's going to be up here towards the top, which shouldn't be too bad. Goes down away from the face. But anyway, a little bit worried about being too high. I'll see what I think when I get down to the end, because this is just the beginning of it. There's a lot more coming, and I'll show you that in the coming days. This was a lot of work to write. I probably spent 7 hours yesterday just charting and writing this up. And I didn't even write the instructions for steeking it. So it took a lot of work to chart out and write up, but I think there's some improvements that I can make to it. Like you can see, I've got a lot of pairs of stitch markers in various places, like a lot of stitch markers over here, all in one area. So I think I can change the way I have it written so you don't have so many stitch markers, which made it really hard in the beginning to be dealing with, you know, a tiny circumference and a million stitch markers. So I'm going to change a few things to it that will improve it, which is basically why I knit all my own samples, was because I'm knitting my own pattern and then I find all the things that can be improved as I go. So there it is so far. This center spine, you can see that here's the center spine here. you can see the first little bit doesn't really show up really well. I was just knitting this, and so you increase, make one left and make one right on both sides of this center stitch. And I don't know if you can see it, but that pulls the stitches so that the ones that are next to the increase are pulled smaller, and so they're not all the same size, and they're kind of muddied and hard to see. So about here, I'm trying to see if I can see, yeah, right here I switched to slipping this center spine stitch on every, it would be the right side row if you were knitting this flat, the same row on which you work the increases next to it, and that makes it stand out really nice. It's really simple. We'll focus on that again. It's really a really simple thing to do. It keeps it small, but lets it stand out, so you have that defined line coming down the center of the shawl. Because I want it to stand out, and I want it to be defined, but I don't want it to really interfere with the flow of the color work through the center, which thus far there's just these two trees that come together there, but when I have some chevrons in there, I don't want there to be a huge chunk just cutting down the middle of it. I just want a simple and minimal line down the center spine, but I also want it to stand out, because that is a design feature that looks nice on shawls when that center spine stands out nicely. So I'm happy with how it looks now as I'm slipping the stitch on every other row. I think it looks really nice. It's clearly defined, but it's not going to take over. It's still going to be in the background. So what else? I think that's it. The steek stitches are worked in a checkerboard pattern, which is just to keep your yarn organized, because you're not going to see it. After I'm done and I steek it, I'll pick up stitches along here and then knit a few rows and then fold it over the top and either knit it to the back or sew it to the back. Or I was also wondering if I could possibly just knit an I-cord edge on the top, encasing the steek inside the I-cord. So that's something I might explore. So you'd still have to just pick up stitches all the way along, but you wouldn't have to. It would be a bit different. It would be, I don't know. That's something that I will think about and explore, which I'm this far along, so I don't really need to worry about the very end of the shawl yet. So I'm hoping to get a lot of it done this week. There we are. And I will come back again another time when I have more done and talk to you about it a little bit more. So thank you for coming, and subscribe to my channel so you can, well, I guess this is going to be one whole video. I was going to say subscribe so you see part 2. I'll be back in a second with more. I am back again. It is now 2 days later, June 2nd, and this is what we have right here. This is the right side, right way around. Yeah. Anyway, this is roughly halfway through the rows. So I'm looking at this tiny little thing. And if this is halfway through, I think this is definitely going to be way too small, because this is halfway. I was thinking that the center spine should be about 22 inches deep. And right now, this measured from here to here is about 9.5 inches, which would put me, 19 inches by the time I get done. And that's a fair bit shorter than what my goal is. I've also tried to measure along this, what will be the wingspan when it's cut open, which is really hard to do because, like I said a few minutes ago, for you, a couple days ago for me, this curves a little bit, so just trying to stretch it and pull it out like this. Gets me about 10 inches. I think, it doesn't sound right, hang on. I'll get my tape measure and measure it right now. So that's a little more than 10, that's quite a bit more than 10 actually. I'm trying not to lose the stitches off of my needles as I straighten this out to measure it. Might be time to switch to my longer cord. So this is 12 1/4 now. So 12 1/4 for the wingspan. So that would be, if I doubled that, that would be 24 inches, which is not big enough at all. So I think this is just gonna be teeny tiny if I continue. Last night I was thinking that I would just finish it because I'm almost through chart C, which is this green with the white snowflakes on it. I'm almost through chart C, and then there's chart D, which is roughly the same amount, 28 rows, and then 20 rows of ribbing. So I thought I could just finish it and see what happens. But ultimately, I think that would just be a giant waste of time because I would end up with this little tiny shawl that that I have no use for. Like, the kids might enjoy playing with it, but they're not going to seriously wear it, and I don't think it's gonna do anything but get tossed on the floor. They are children. So I think what I'm going to do at this point is rip all the way back up here into the gray section above these trees, and then make this gray section deeper, quite a bit deeper, maybe like 50% deeper. So yeah, that would be like down here, and then do the trees, and then do this green snowflake section and make it also about 50% deeper, so that this green section is just as deep as this gray section. Make that deeper as well, and then leave the whole big, there's a whole big colorwork chart for the hem. Got the pattern right here. You want a sneak peek? So then there's this for the hem, and then there's the ribbing. So I think I'll just make these two sections with the snowflakes, this gray section and this green section, deeper, and then these trees will move down a bit, which I was thinking they were too far up to the top, too close to the neck, so they will look better a little bit further down. And then I think I'm also going to change it because you can see the trees are sitting above the chevrons, and I did it that way so that you don't have to knit with 3 colors up here. You will eventually have to knit with 3 colors. Like, I think there's 1 row as you're transitioning through here where you're knitting with 3 colors, and then later on, yeah, there's 1 row there. And later on, as you get into the last chart, you do have a fair number of rows where you have to knit with 3 colors at once. So even though I was originally thinking that I would try to avoid, oops, sorry, I'm kicking my table. Even though I was originally thinking I would try to avoid sections where you had to knit with 3 colors, just to kind of make it a little bit easier, a little more accessible, I decided to just toss that out because you're going to knit with 3 colors in this, which is fine. I already have a tutorial on that, so you will be okay. So I'm going to change this chart a little bit and just pull these trees down maybe 1 row. Yeah, I think one single row lower down, so they'll sit down a little bit in these chevrons, and then they won't look quite so much like they're just floating there. I think it'll be more cohesive in this section instead of just some levitating trees. And yeah, since I'm going to rip back to here, I don't think I have to rip clear back to the beginning and start all over again. I think just above these trees, and then add more gray. I just need to make sure that I'm adding the right number of rows so that I can get a number of repeats that hopefully I don't have to completely redo all of my charts. So the center spine increases every other row. The wingspan increases every row. That means I increase by 3 stitches every 2 rows. So my repeats up here in the top, this repeat and the repeats of these are 6 stitches wide. So I'll have to add in increments of 4 rows so that I'm adding I'm adding 6 stitches, so I'm getting a whole full repeat as I'm moving through this, and then I don't think it will mess up the subsequent charts at all, hopefully. Hopefully. I don't want to have to go through and redraw all of my charts because I spent a lot of time on that and figuring out everything to make it nice and cohesive. So I don't want to have to redraw all of my charts. So if I add them in 4 row increments up here, but this last one is a 12 stitch repeat. So I do need to get down to the bottom and make sure that I have 12 stitches. So maybe I'll add it in 8 row increments so that I'm adding 2 repeats of the smaller motifs and 1 repeat of the larger motif all at once. I'm thinking as I talk about this. Hopefully that makes sense. Figuring out the math of, you know, how much to add and make sure all your repeats still work out. Make sure all of the little side pieces, like you have the repeat here, but then this is all individually charted and this is all individually charted. So I need to make sure that these little sections over here on the side still work out. So, anywho, that's where I am. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rip this all out. It's been a lot of fun to work with so far. I've really enjoyed knitting on it. It's not hard at all. It's not hard at all. It's color work, which I love to knit color work. It's in my favorite colors, green, gray. It's just, you're just increasing in different spots as compared to a sweater. So it's not hard at all. Like I said, this first little tiny bit is kind of fiddly getting started because it's such a small circumference. But once you get into it, it's not hard. Not hard at all. Easy and fun and exciting to watch it take shape, and I'm really enjoying this. So yeah, now I'm gonna rip it all out and start over. I've got some admin to do, some emails and test knits, and then I'm going to do this, work on this. So anyway, wish me luck, wish me good math vibes. And hopefully when I come back and show this to you again, I'll have even more done and it will be working out fantastically and just perfect. So anyway, I will see you in the future. I'm back again. This is Thursday, June 9th. I think last time I recorded was 1 week ago from today, so I'm back again to show you more of the Snowy Shawl. If you hear children shrieking in the background, don't worry about it. My girls are supposed to be doing some chores and cleaning up a little bit downstairs, but they are instead messing around, and the older one is trying to put ice cubes in the younger one's shirt, and I was just like, well, I'm gonna go record and we'll deal with this later. So here we go. Here is the progress. It is currently still on my 32-inch long cable. I thought about putting it on the 40-inch cable, but just didn't do it. I'll switch to the 40-inch cable when it gets so bunched up on this 32-inch cable that it's kind of trying to pop off the ends of the needles. But so far, the 32-inch cable works just fine. So here it is. Last time, I was down into the green section, but it didn't have these larger snowflakes. So I was telling you about how I was going to rip back and redo some stuff and start over again and make it bigger. And I have done that. Last weekend, my sisters and I had a little girls trip, and I got there a couple hours before they did, so I was able to sit in complete silence and just rip it back and put it all back on the needles. But I really didn't knit much of anything at all. We went for a hike that we could not complete because when we got up to the top of the ridge, which was probably, I don't know, 9,000 plus, 9,500 feet of elevation, there was still so much snow that it was completely impassable, and we lost the trail, but we tried. So we were all wet because we were going through the snow, and it was knee deep or mid-thigh deep, and it was just like, we're not gonna make it there. We need to try again in like July or August, but early June this year was not happening. So, but I did not knit much this last weekend. But once I came home, I have been knitting on it a lot. So I think this is not like a progress keeper. I just put that there. I rearranged my stitch markers. Oops, I lost a stitch already. I think I told you about having too many stitch markers before, so I've changed it. So there's 2 here. So this one's the beginning of the round, and this one's the beginning of the steek section. So I've got the steek section between these 2 markers. It's probably easier to see from this side. And then I had one here at the center spine, but the center spine is really easy to see, and I can really easily read my knitting and see that one. So I just kind of abandoned this marker back here because it's really easy to see where the spine is and to just read your knitting there. So anyway, things that I changed. So I was worried about this shawl being way too small, so I changed it so that it would be bigger. One of the things that I did was I greatly expanded this gray section. I doubled this gray section. I doubled the depth of it. So that's twice as big now. And then you get into the trees, which I told you before that I was going to put these trees down into these chevrons, like snuggle them down in there, because they look a little bit floaty right now. But I ended up not doing that because you'll see the top of the tree, the very first stitch, the top of the tree, lines up with the little snowflakes from before. So if I did another row of these white snowflakes, that's where each of those snowflakes would be. So this tree kind of marries neatly into the snowflake section. And then another consideration is, do you see how the white chevron comes together around the center spine? Do you see how that just comes together so nicely right there? That's another thing that I was considering. So if I brought these trees down, I would have to, let's see, I can't move the white chevrons up or down, or I would mess up how it comes together at this center spine. Even off by a single row, I would end up with like a partial, it would partially come up, want to come up again in the repeat. So to get this chevron perfectly matched up like this at the center spine, it has to be in this exact spot. I can't move it up or down a row, or it throws that off and it won't match up that neatly. They are screaming like crazy, but they are not having a problem. They're just having fun. And if I move these trees up or down a row, then they wouldn't line up with the snowflakes quite right. So I was having a little bit of a problem. It's either the trees don't line up with the snowflakes, the chevron doesn't line up, or the trees stay where they are, which is a little bit, they're levitating a little bit. And so I decided to leave the tree, sorry, it's my phone. I decided to leave the trees where they are, which they're floating. I don't think it looks bad. I'm kind of calling them levitating trees because they are a little bit up there, but I think it looks beautiful just how it is. And I didn't want to mess up this chevron, and I didn't want to mess it up so that this didn't line up right. So I decided to leave the trees where they are. I decided floating trees was the best look. All of that. And then I was thinking like this, it was previously just, this section here, the top of the tree to the bottom of the chevron. And I decided that was a little bit scrawny for the middle of the shawl. So I took the first 2 rows of snowflakes in the green section and I made them bigger. So you can see that these are the little 4 stitch crosses or whatever they are, the little snowflakes. And then you're going to move into the single stitch snow under there for a while. Yeah, so I'm a little less than halfway through the green now, so it'll be a little more than twice as deep as this, with more of these single stitch snowflakes before I get into the hem. It's very noisy down there. I'm sorry if it's bothering you, but this is going to kind of, I guess if it doubles, it will be kind of down here, and then the hem section, and then the ribbing. So this is going to be a good size shawl when it's done, which I'm really happy about. I was worried about it being too small before, so now that it's going to be definitely big enough, I'm happy. So this is the center spine. I didn't measure it. I told you before I was going for like a 22 inch center spine, and we are currently at 13 inches, 13 and a quarter roughly, so another 9 inches. I'm on row 79 and there's going to be 153. So 153 minus 79 is, I'm slightly more than halfway, so that's going to be a 26 inch center spine. That might be bigger. That might be bigger than I wanted. I guess we'll see how it turns out. Basically, how I decided how many rows to go for now is I took it and I took my rough measurements and I said, okay, if the wingspan of the previous charted version of the shawl is going to be about 40 inches and I want it to be 60 inches, so we're having, 40 inches to 113 rows is 60 inches to X number of rows, and then cross multiply and solve for X, which came out to, I think, 159 rows or something like that. And I had, no, it was 169, I think. And I ended up with 153 rows on my new take 2 of this. So it should be plenty big. It should be plenty big. So yeah, it should be big enough. This is it so far. I was a little bit worried about these larger snowflakes and how they looked, because when you're knitting you have it just right in front of you and it's close up. I'm losing that stitch again. And so I kept looking at it and thinking, maybe I don't like that, maybe I don't like that, maybe it's too much. But a good thing to do when you're a bit hesitant is to just set it down somewhere where you can see it. So I just set it on the end table next to my chair in the living room, and then I can see it throughout the day, and I can see it from a distance and kind of see what it looks like, in real life, not when you're knitting on it, and I like it. I'm looking at it in the camera now too, and I do really like how that looks with the larger snowflakes here. So I think it's going to be beautiful. I think it's going to be a nice size, and it's going to be so cozy. So there it is. And I'm going to go knit away on this, and then I will come back again and give you another update of how it's coming along. Looks like a really funky hat. Jimmy, my 5-year-old, was like, "Mom, is that a hat?" No. No, it's not. It looks really weird. It does. It really does look really weird. But it'll look beautiful when it's done. So I'm gonna go make my children clean up their mess, because tomorrow is gonna be a very busy day. It is my father-in-law's birthday, and my sister-in-law's coming into town, and there will be cousins, and there will be a barbecue at Grandma and Grandpa's house, and all kinds kinds of fun stuff, so we need to get things cleaned up today so that we can enjoy tomorrow. So, until next time. Hello, and welcome to the mountains. My family and I are on a camping trip. There's a rather persistent bird in the background. My family and I are on a camping trip, and I brought the Snowy Shawl along, so I thought that I would do part of my vlog filming here in the mountains so you can enjoy seeing where we like to go and hang out during our family time and to relax and have some time off. My campsite's maybe 150 yards that way. And here behind me you can see there's a whole big willow marsh, and there's some beaver dams and beaver ponds, and there's a stream on the other side of it, but on this side it's mostly fed by springs, which there's one right down there, literally right down there, feeding this whole area. So it's very wet and marshy and full of willows and grass, and we've seen moose down there, and there's deer down there, and anyway, you can see the mountains way up here. You can see all the snow still on them. It has been pretty chilly. I think it's June 17th. It might be June 18th. Maybe even the 16th. This is like a reoccurring theme of all of my videos. I have no idea what day it is. It's either the 16th, 17th, or 18th. It is a Saturday. So whichever one of those is a Saturday, that's the day it is today. And it is cold. It's actually been really, really cold and windy all day, but the wind died down quite a bit, so I was able to shed my outer layers. So you can see this beautiful sweater that I have on. You can also see my base layer underneath it. My wool base layer. I've got wool base layer pants on too. This is Snowy Pines here, and I wanted to wear this one while I film this because these two are like sibling patterns, perhaps. Sibling patterns, is that a thing? Sibling patterns? You can see the snow. There's snow up here, there's snow on here, there's trees. It uses all the same, they use all the same yarn, both of them, in the same colors. So anyway, I'm all matchy-matchy here in my sweaters. Well, sweater and shawl. So, the Snowy Shawl. I don't know what bird that is, but it really wants to talk about in this video here. So here's the Snowy Shawl so far. Here it is. I've got chart D here. So I've got 14 more rows of chart D to go. And then there's just about 20 rows of ribbing. I think it's 20 rows, about 2 inches of ribbing, just in the dark green color to go. So you can see I'm almost done. You can see I'm just on the last row of the trees here. So you can see the trees in there. So I think last time I came and chatted with you, I was about here, and I was talking about how I'd refigured all the charts, and when I got down through them they were flowing nicely and working out, but when I got down to the transition between chart C and chart D, it did not work out at all, and I had to just spend some time completely redoing chart D to get the transition between C and D right and to get this right. And so there were some changes in chart D from the last version, but honestly I think this one works better because you can see this little bottom snowflake in here. It is in the appropriate position to flow with the rest of the snowflakes up here, whereas in the old chart D it was stacked. It would have been stacked with this one, which didn't quite look as nice as this. I prefer this where it's flowing neatly with the whole pattern. And then you go into the trees here, and then underneath the trees there's going to be another repeat of this chevron, and there's going to be more snowflakes, kind of like this, but not exactly like this, similar but not identical. And then the ribbing. So there we are. That's where it is. I haven't measured it lately. I'm just operating, this is the center spine here. I'm just operating under the assumption that it's definitely going to be big enough. You can see, I'll spread the stitches out so you can see. Here's the center spine. You can see I've got 2 trees coming off the center. I'm not a huge fan of how this comes together, this gray section comes together here and looks like just like one kind of rounded peak, whereas these are all more, you know, sharper defined peaks. This one looks kind of rounded because it's 2 coming together. I'm not a huge fan of that, but that's just how it had to be. There was no other way around it. I messed around with these charts for several hours trying to change the way that these 2 gray sections came together, and there really was no good way to do that, because with the amount of rows you have to shift the patterning by to keep it flowing, it just doesn't work out. So it has to be like that, which if I wasn't telling you about this right now in this video, I doubt anyone ever would have noticed or cared. But these are the kind of things that I notice and I care about and I do my best to take care of. So another thing I have been doing that I've never done before, I don't know if you can see, you can see if I can focus on it. Look at that. I'm catching floats. Maybe it'll focus on me again. Hang on, let me make this focus way back there. Then hopefully I'm not blurry. But anyway, there are some really long floats around the center spine as you're working through. Like really long floats. This is the center spine here. And I've caught a few of them. Like I've caught this one here. I caught another one up here. I'm not a fan of catching floats because it just adds so much fuss to while you're knitting. It slows you down. It kind of throws off my rhythm. But I thought since these floats are so long and they're kind of coming around what is essentially a corner at this center spine, I thought maybe I should catch them just to be sure, which is a very easy thing to do. You insert your needle through the stitch, put the contrast color yarn or the color yarn that you are catching over the needle, grab the color you're working with, then take the color you're catching off the needle and pull your stitch through. That's probably more confusing than helpful. But it's really simple, but it still adds, you know, you have to do this and it's kind of fussy and it throws my whole rhythm off and I'm just like, blah, I don't want to do this. Like in this whole sweater, I never caught a single float. But I've caught some floats in here that are the really long ones. To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of it because when I'm looking along here, in the areas where I know I've caught the float, which is probably the only reason I can see it is probably because I know it's there and so I'm looking for it. But when I'm looking at the fabric, if I stretch it a little bit, I can see the caught float, like the right where it's catching, around that stitch that it's caught on. I can see it from this side when I stretch the fabric out. It's probably not something that anybody would ever notice unless they were looking for it and they knew where to look and they're deliberately stretching the fabric to try to see if you can see it. But anyway, I'm not a fan of that, so I'm gonna go back to my habit of not catching floats, which I don't think the floats look bad. Like my mom does not like, sorry mom, my mom does not like the way the fabric looks like this with all the floats. Like my mom doesn't like the way this looks, and I know for some people they really don't like the way this looks, but I think it's really pretty. I like it. I think it has this whole interest and beauty all of its own, and I like it. Anyway, yeah. Okay, so I've caught some floats. It's not going to become a habit, but I have done a few. So another thing that I realized just earlier while I was knitting by the campfire, this section of trees down here at the bottom, I held the gray dominant and the green non-dominant. So if you are not familiar with colorwork knitting, color dominance is the way you hold each color means that one color is going to sit a little bit on top of the other color, and the one that sits a little bit on top is the dominant color. And so you want to hold your contrasting color, which would be the green of the trees, as your dominant color, and the background color, which would be the gray here, as the non-dominant color. But I messed that up, and I held the gray dominant and the green non-dominant, which you can't really tell. I can a little bit because I'm comparing them. So if I compare it to this tree up here, where I held the gray non-dominant and the green dominant, these stitches are a little bit more prominent than the green stitches down here. Not significantly so. Let me see if I can kind of put them next to each other. It's kind of funny. I don't know if you can even tell on the video. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. It's not a huge deal. It's not a really huge deal. And now that I've gone through this entire section and I am done, well, I have this much left. I have one tree whose final stitch needs to be made, and then all the trees are done. So now that I've gone through this entire section, I don't want to rip back and do it again just to change the color dominance. Yeah, I just don't want to do that. I think the reason that I did that was because in this section here, in this whole section, I was holding the green non-dominant so that I could hold the white dominant. And then when I moved down here and added in the gray, instead of switching the green to my other hand, I just kept it in my right hand, which is, if I hold it in my right hand, it's the non-dominant color. The left hand is the dominant color. So I just left it in the same hand and just kept on knitting and just switched the gray for the white in my left hand, and that's how I ended up knitting the trees that should have been held dominant in my non-dominant hand. So that's another thing that probably nobody would have ever noticed if I hadn't said anything about it, but that's another thing that happened here. For a minute I did think about ripping it out, but I did not. I really don't want to rip it out. I really don't want to. So I'm not going to. I don't think anybody would really ever be able to tell. Even now that I've told you, it's probably not something you can tell very easily or at all, but that's something I did that I should not have done. So anyway, what else was I going to tell you about this? I filmed a podcast the other day and I talked about it then, so I'm trying to remember what did I talk about in the podcast and what have I not talked about on this vlog, since I'm filming for two separate things. Did I tell you about, I messed up right here. Don't think I told you about that. Do you see that white stitch between my fingers? That should be green. So that's not the steek stitch. So there's one stitch on the outside, then there's 4 steek stitches, then there's another stitch on the outside. I'm going to cut up the middle of the 4 steek stitches, but I'm going to pick up stitches to cover the steek stitches just on the inside of that first column of knit stitches. So there's going to be one column of knit stitches running as a straight line. Well, they're going to radiate in 2 directions across the top of the shawl. So this one needed to be green. This one right here needed to be green, so that it didn't disrupt, you know, the line as it goes across the top of the shawl. But I accidentally knit it in white, and I didn't realize it until I came around to the next round, and I was knitting it, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's the one supposed to be green. So I just left it, and I'm going to duplicate stitch over top of it when I'm done knitting, probably before I cut the steek. I'll probably duplicate stitch over it and then weave in those ends and then cut the steek. So you can see the steek looks pretty messy. I'm just knitting it in kind of a checkerboard pattern, but it doesn't look very attractive, to be honest. Maybe down here at the bottom it looks the most attractive right there, but it's kind of kind of messy because you're not doing color work on every single round. It's in these sections here, it's only every 4th round. So you do color work every 4th round, then every round for a little bit, and then every round here, and then every 4th round here, and then every round again. So it's not completely uniform, so it looks a little bit messy, but that's not going to matter because it's going to be covered up and hidden and nobody will ever see it. You're seeing it now, but when this is done, you'll never see it again. So that's the steek. Every time I tell people that this is a shawl, I get a little bit of a funny look because it is just this funky shape. And I'm like, no, it's a shawl. I'm just gonna cut it open. Like, you're gonna cut it open? Are you crazy? Like, yeah, it's a normal thing that people do every day to cut it open. I'm gonna film that part too because that will be the first proper steek that I ever do. I have done steeks before. When I do a colorwork swatch, I like to knit it in the round and then steek it. So I have steeked quite a few times, but I've never actually steeked something that needs to stay together and be worn. Like bush swatches, I just need to get a measurement off of. It doesn't matter if they eventually unravel, but this cannot unravel. So that's a little bit different. So yeah, anyway. There's the, how many minutes do I have on there? I have apparently been talking for 16 minutes already. This is going to be a very, very long vlog here. So there's the snowy shawl in process. Hopefully next time I show it to you, it will be done because I'm about to go, tomorrow I go home for my camping trip, and the very next day I go on a trip with just 4 days with my family, my parents and siblings, and then I'm gonna take this along, I think. I'm really hoping to have it done by the end, or maybe I'll just take along my sweater that needs sleeves. I haven't quite decided yet, but anyway, so there's the snowy shawl. Yeah, I think that's everything I want to talk about here. We took pictures. My husband is my photographer extraordinaire, and he took pictures of this sweater and also red cedar, literally right here, right behind me, yesterday afternoon. And we took some a little bit over that way too. Yeah, we were just down here by the willows, and a little bit in the trees, a little bit back over here by this dead tree, over here. So all in this very small area here is pretty special. It's my favorite camping spot, and it's where I took all of the pictures of Woodland Ramble last year at this time on a family camping trip with all of the kids, and I took the pictures like literally right here in these trees, and then over back here in those trees as well. So yeah, this is a pretty special place for me and my family, so I thought I would sit here for a few minutes and record a little bit, and you can see someplace that's special to me and to us, and enjoy the scenery. My big head wasn't in the way the whole time. So anyway, yeah, I slept in this sweater last night. I'm gonna sleep in it again tonight because it's cold and I'm in a tent. So I think I will go and find my children and clean the s'mores off their faces. So until next time, you guys. Hello and welcome back to the Snowy Shawl progress vlog. I have it done. Well, not done, but the knitting part is done, except for where I cover up the steek. So here it is in all of its glory. You can see it. So now today I need to first weave in all these ends, and then I'm going to steek it right along here, along there. So as I was looking up how to do the crochet reinforcement, because I plan to do a crochet reinforcement for the steek, I realized that most places advise doing a 5-stitch steek section and then cutting up the center stitch, so the one that's in the very middle, but I did a 4-stitch steek section, so we'll see how it goes. I think it will be just fine. So I'm going to do a crochet reinforcement on it. I'm going to film a tutorial of what I'm doing, and I'm going to film when I'm doing it. We'll see how well that works because I have my 2 little boys here with me. I currently bought them off with Otter Pops. They're outside on the deck with Otter Pops so that I can film this. But you can see this is where I started. And so I'm going to leave the 1 stitch on the outside. So it's 6 total stitches in this whole section. So I'm going to leave the 1 on the outside. I'm going to pick up stitches for the covering on the outside of that. And then I'm going to cut up the center of the remaining 4 stitches. Right there. It's impossible to see as I try to explain it to you like that. But when I do it, I will have my camera set up so it's just pointing straight down at the table, and then you can see very clearly what I'm doing. So that's what I'm going to do this afternoon. My goal for today is I am going to weave in all the ends, do the crochet reinforcement, cut the steek, pick up the stitches, and knit the little bit that covers up the steek and have it blocked by the time I go to bed tonight. So it is already like 2:30 in the afternoon. I should be able to do that, but I might be staying up late if I don't manage to get that done. So there it is. It's half of it. It's a funky shape now before it's been cut, because like I told you before, there's increases every single row on this side and every other row in the center. So it's kind of a funky shape right now. But here's the center. I fussed a lot over this center spine, so I am very, very pleased with how it turned out. See it? So I'm gonna go weave in all of these ends, and next time you see me in just a second, I will be working on the steek. I am back with an update. You can see I've got my crochet reinforcement done. Let me focus on that. You can see I've used the white excuse me, because my steek has the gray and the green in it, so I thought the color that would show up the best would be white. I do kind of wish that I had done a much different color. I should have gone with like caramel or something, because I have a ton of it just sitting in my closet upstairs. So if I'd done the caramel, then it would stand out much better than this does. It would be a lot easier to see, which would make it a lot easier when I cut to see where I'm going. So if I was doing this again, I would probably use a color that was much different. You won't see it in the end, like when the steek is done, because after I cut it, I'm going to enclose it in green. So I'm going to enclose it all in green, so you're not going to see it anyway. Anyway, that's what I did. I really don't think, I know I just said a few minutes ago, it's a few minutes for you watching the video, but a couple hours for me. I said that most steeked sections have an odd number of stitches, and then you cut up the center of the stitches. But I was thinking about that. You know, a knit stitch is the same either way, up or down. If you just shift half a row over or half a stitch over, it looks exactly the same if you just switch it around. So I don't think it's going to matter at all that I have an even number of stitches for my steek. I'll show you here. You can see my reinforcement there, and I'm going to cut that strand right in the middle of it. Here in just a second, I need to figure out what my boys are up to before I do that. Ah, they're about to come in. they're about to come in. I filmed a tutorial on how to do a crochet reinforcement of a steek. I'll put a link to that down below if it has already been uploaded to YouTube, so we'll see if I put this up first or the tutorial up first. Can you please be quiet? Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jimmy. I had Aiden hanging out with me while I was doing the tutorial for this crochet reinforcement, so that one is a bit wild. It's a bit of a wild tutorial. Okay, you can go back outside. Usually I film video content and tutorials and things like that on Grandma Day. My mother-in-law lives only 20 minutes away, and she likes to take the kids once a week and just have Grandma Day with no rules and all partying all day long. And usually I film all my tutorials and stuff on Grandma Day because it's really quiet. I'll typically have Aiden with me because he's too much work for Grandma on the day when she has all the other three too. But he is so quiet. He's an introvert, and whenever the other three are gone, he will not speak above a whisper. He just whispers. He doesn't want to disturb the quiet at all, so he just whispers. But that, Grandma's off having fun with her sister, so if I had waited for the next Grandma Day to film this tutorial, it would be at least a week and a half, and I don't want to wait that long. So there is my reinforcement. You can see on there, and yeah, I'm about to cut, and I'm going to film that part too. Okay, I am here and I'm about to cut my steek. You can see my reinforced, my crochet reinforcements here that are leaning away. They lean to the right. As you're working them, it will always lean to the right, so make sure you're working it in the column to the right of the stitches you're going to steek or cut. You can see in between there, you can see the back side of them, and you can see where I'm going to cut. Now I'm going to take my little tiny scissors, which aren't very sharp, so I am wondering if this is going to work okay, and I'm just going to start cutting. So I'm pulling it apart, which is kind of hard, finding that stitch in between my reinforced sections, and just snip, snip, snip. This is going to be very slow going if I just do this one stitch at a time, but that will be safer, I think. This would work a lot better if my scissors were sharper. Maybe I'll buy a new pair of scissors before I do another one. All right, so I've cut part of it. You can see my crochet steek, or my crochet reinforcement is holding my steek stitches in nicely. Nothing is unraveling, coming apart. So I'm gonna keep on going. Every time I told someone that I was going to steek this, they were like, huh? Like, I'm gonna cut it right here, right down the middle of this. They're like, are you out of your mind? No. Totally normal thing that people do every single day. Jimmy is back in the house. And here where I've got two colors, you can see I've got two strands back. Well, maybe you can't.
Who are you talking to?
I'm talking to myself, Jimmy. I'm talking to lots of people on the internet. You can see I've got a green and a white strand there because this is part of the stranded knitting part, so I'm cutting both of those. What do you think, Jimmy? I'm cutting my knitting. What do you think?
I think you're gonna cut into.
I think I'm gonna cut it in two. Do you think this looks crazy?
Yeah, but I think I cut it into a shirt.
I'm gonna cut it into a shirt?
Yes. Well, a sweater.
A sweater?
Yeah, and then put buttons on it.
Put buttons on it?
Yeah.
But this is gonna be a shawl. It's kind of like a scarf.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you think that'll look cool?
Yeah.
You think so?
Mom, are you done?
No, I'm not done. You see, I just started.
But are you done knitting it?
I am done knitting it.
Why you can't?
To make it into a shawl. because I knit it in around. Remember, it looks like a funny giant hat?
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm gonna knit it and turn it into a
But
shawl.
it was the size of a giant's head.
Yeah, so now I'm gonna cut it open and turn it into a shawl. What do you think of that?
Well, are you gonna knit it some more?
No. Well, I guess I am gonna knit it a little bit more.
Mom,
What?
it's on this light.
No, we're not gonna turn on that light.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to go keep cutting this.
Mom,
Zoom out.
I'm doing a
I'm pretty-
sawmill.
You're doing a sawmill.
Yeah.
Pretty pleased with how this is looking. It's hard to see for you to see this. Jimmy, can you be quiet for a second? It's hard to see this in the video, but it's looking really nice. The cut edge is round back of there, so I'm not seeing any loose ends. These are from when I wove in the ends. So I'm really happy with this. I'm gonna keep cutting this until I've gotten to the top, and then I will come back and show you. All right, you guys, it's a very exciting moment. It is now a shawl. You really can't see because I'm way too close. Look at that. It's so cool. Just cover up my head. How amazing is that? How amazing is that? You just chop something up, it becomes something else. Oh, that does not want to look nice, does it? Here, hang on. We'll do this a little better. It will be nicer fabric when it's blocked. So I don't wear shawls. This is how you do it. This is how you do it. I don't know. Anyway, when I block it, the fabric will get a lot drapier. I'm stretching my hands out, so I am 5'10" tall, so I assume my wingspan is somewhat close to 6 feet. And I'm holding it in both hands out to the end, so yeah. That should be nice, but it's not too deep. Not too deep. Not too deep. Come on, behave yourself. No. That's my low back there where it hits. That looks nice, doesn't it? This is very exciting. After knitting something in a circle for ages, and now all of a sudden it's what it is supposed to be. So that's very cool. Very cool. Very cool, you guys. So it's 5 o'clock, 5:15, maybe even 5:30 by now. And I finally got the steek done, and now I plan to pick up the stitches along the edge and enclose the steek so that I can have my goal of having this blocked tonight. So anyway, I was planning, there's been a lot of appearances from my two little boys in this video today, so anyway. So I was planning to pick up the stitches for, well, let's do it in the gray section, it's easier to see, for the covering right here, leave that one stitch on the side. But I realized that if I do that, when I come here to the very, very middle, you see that? I will run out of something to pick up. So I would have to pick up down below that, and so I would have that stitch running along the picked up section the whole way except for at the very middle. Where I would have to, yeah, I'd have to do something pretty different there, because yeah, there's just not enough fabric right there in the middle. I would have to just jump down and pick up underneath it and then jump back up, which probably wouldn't look too bad. You probably wouldn't notice it because it's right in the middle, so you wouldn't see it very often. But I don't like that idea at all. So I think I'm gonna change my plan and pick up down below all of that. So just pick up down below there, and that stitch that is the selvage stitch will end up enclosed with the steek. I think that's what I'll do now, which makes it a fair bit fatter, which would make that whole section a fair bit fatter, which was not my goal. I wanted to keep this top edge as slim and streamlined as possible, but it does not look like that's going to be a thing that I can do. So anyway, maybe in the final pattern I will do fewer stitches there, because I've got 6 there in the middle. If I take out 1 or 2 of them, that might be better. I don't know, I'll think about it. So I'm gonna go pick up stitches just on this side down here, and then I will finish that off and see what I think before I make up my mind on that. So I'm gonna go do that now. Hello, and welcome to my very sunny deck. I thought I'd come out here because the boys are inside just making an absolute ruckus. They dumped out my very full laundry basket and are playing in the pile of laundry. So anyway, here I am. It is the following morning after the previous clips that were in this video, so I did not finish this shawl last night like I had planned to. I did not get it pinned out before I went to bed. I was sitting in bed sewing this part down, and it was 11 o'clock, and I was just like, you know what, I'm done. I'm done. It's time to go to bed. I'll finish it in the morning. So I finished it very first thing when I got up this morning. It's all completely done. I just need to throw it in a bath and pin it out. So here it is. It's very warm and cozy, you know, sitting on a sunny deck on July 2nd. I really don't need this. I'm getting pretty warm. But anyway, so it's done. These, it's the other end somewhere. The ends are a bit short lengthwise right now, but it is going to grow quite a lot lengthwise when I block it, because the fabric is, you might be able to hear them screaming in the background. They're making a lot of noise in there. The fabric, the colorwork fabric, is still really kind of bunched up from everything, so when I block it, that should relax and smooth out and get longer, get this longer. So here it is. Here it is. I know it's going to be really hard to see, not only because of the really bright sunlight, but I can't like show off the whole thing in this video because I'm just too close to the camera. But I'm going to, when it's done being blocked and everything, I'm going to film some video of it in action and being worn, and then I will put this in here so you can see it. So sewing down, I picked up the stitches, which I told you I was going to do it. I covered up all of my selvage stitches and steek stitches, and then knit it long enough that it would go over the top without bunching it down inside, and then bound off and sewed it down. So that's what it looks like there. Turn it a little so you can see better. That's what it looks like there on the inside. It was a really simple way to enclose the steek and finish it off, and I think it looks nice. I like how it looks better in the green section than it does across this big gray section. But I guess that's just how it goes. But anywho, so that's how it looks. It is quite thick because, you know, you have the double layer of the the fabric from the bit that you fold over top, and then the steek stitches inside. And in some areas where you've got a lot of color work, like in this area here and down here in this area, it's pretty thick and bulky because there's a lot of yarn inside there. There's a lot of ends inside there, but it's not stiff, really. It's not stiff. I don't think it will be an issue. I am kind of wondering if I should maybe put like tassels or pom-poms on the ends. I also sewed the ends shut, so because it's just a piece of fabric that's folded over. So this was open here at the end, and then I just whip stitched it closed with the end before I was weaving in the ends from this bit. So it's all closed up. You can't see inside. It's finished nice and neat. And oh, this is what the inside looks like. If you were curious about what the inside looks like. If you don't like floats, you probably will not like this, but I think floats look really cool. I think they're pretty. I like floats. Every once in a while I'll see a sweater that's made to be worn float side out, and I think it's really cool, but I haven't, you know, gotten up the nerve to actually do it yet for myself. But anyway, I think the floats look cool, so that if you see the inside of it, it's still going to look really nice, but I mean, when you're wearing it wrapped around your neck, it's unlikely that you'll really see the floats. Although if you wore it just around your shoulders, traditional shawl style, it would probably be more likely that you would see them, but I think they look nice. My puppy dog is here to say hello, and he's hitting the table. Yes, hi Zeke. Hi Zeke. So there it is, in all of its glory. I've had a lot of fun filming these little video snippets, and I hope you enjoyed watching. I know I'm not the best videographer or editor, and there are a lot of people who put their videos together a lot nicer than I do, and so I appreciate you sticking with me in all of my simple videography skills all the way to the end. Anyway, they're absolutely shrieking and running around. Yeah. Boys, oh boys. This took me from May 31st, I cast it on. I think May 31st I cast it on. And so it's July 2nd today, so that's a month and 3 days, 33 days that it took me to make this shawl. I honestly thought it would go faster than that. I thought I would be able to get it done in 2 weeks, but I did not get it done that quick because, one, I knit like a third of it and then ripped it back out. Or maybe less than a third of it, maybe a quarter of it. And then ripped it back out and reknit it. So that makes it take longer. And I also I have 4 kids. I can't knit as much as some people can. And I'll see other people on Instagram or YouTube who are just absolutely prolific knitters, and they're cranking things out. Like, they'll podcast every 2 weeks and have tons of new finished sweaters and all this. And I'm just like, how on earth do you knit that much? Because I really can't knit that much. And I was feeling kind of crummy yesterday when I realized that I was not going to be able to get this done yesterday, which was my goal. But this morning when I woke up, it kind of occurred to me that, I mean, this isn't a race. This isn't a competition. Just because somebody else puts out a lot more than I do or knits a lot more than I do doesn't mean that my own knitting is less or anything. Just to live life, you know, on your own terms without competition is pretty nice. So I go slow because I have a million children who I keep at home. There are other designers who either don't have children or they have childcare, and they're obviously able to get more done than I am, where I am the primary parent of 4 little kids. So I need to remember not to compare myself to other people who have more time than I do and just make what I make in the time that I have. So, anyway. Jimmy's out the other door yelling for me. I think he probably hit his head or something. Anyway, so I am going to go soak this and lock it, and the next time you see it, it will be completely done. Hello and welcome to the final installment of the Snowy Shawl vlog. You can see I have it finished. It might be a little bit noisy out here. There's the river right down there. There's birds making noise everywhere. So I apologize, but I thought I would do it in a scenic location. My camera's tilted up a little bit because my tripod isn't tall enough for this. So here it is, all done. Doesn't it look perfect and cozy? Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing? And yes, I did buy this in this linen dress in a beige color just for wearing with this shawl. Usually I buy them in colors, but this time I bought a beige one. It's from Not Perfect Linen, in case you were wondering. So here it is. Ta-da! I'll take it off and put it this way. Doesn't that just look amazing? Isn't it beautiful? It's perfect. It turned out just how I wanted it to. The fabric, now that it's blocked, if you remember from the last installment, it was really stiff and it didn't want to behave, but now that it's blocked, it's really soft and has a good bit of drape for a woolen spun yarn. Here's the inside. I noticed when I took it off of the blocking mats earlier that I have a couple of loose floats. Here's one here, it's really loose. There's another one up here where it's really loose, but everything looks fine and dandy from the front side, so I plan to do absolutely nothing about these loose floats at all. If someday a problem arises, then I might like pull it up and tack it down or something, but I don't see any reason to do that right now. So here it is. It's kind of chilly right now. I kind of need it. It's so cozy. I really love it. I really love how it looks close up, and I also really love how it looks from a distance, you know, just put it up somewhere and look at it from far away. It looks really good too. This is not stiff or hard at all. If you remember from the last installment, I was talking about how thick it was, but when it was blocked, it softened up really nice. So it's not stiff, even though it's a good chunk of fabric here. You can see how thick it is there, but it's not stiff at all. It's not bothersome. It's just really cozy, and it's big enough to wrap up in, to really wrap up in, but it's not so big that it's unmanageable. You can wear it like this. It doesn't quite, it gets down to my lower back, right above my bum, the point of the shawl, and then the wingspan is really long. I'm gonna trip and fall. The wingspan is really big, as you can see. The top edge measures 74 inches, and then it's 27 inches? Yeah, 27 inches down the center spine. So it turned out a really good size. I think it's a really good size. It fits me really nice. So I'm so happy with it. I'm so happy with it. You are missing the eye contact because I'm staring at myself and my camera's screen, admiring my shawl. And my dog is here, so you can hear footsteps crunching in the grass, coming to see what I'm up to. So there it is, the Snowy Shawl. Juliette is a really, really nice yarn, the Durarium Natura Juliette. It's really nice. for color work, and it's really nice for texture. It looks good in both, and it's really soft and light and airy and lofty, but it doesn't get stiff. Like you can see, this is not a stiff fabric here at all. Yeah, it's just a really, really nice yarn. Glad I used it. Plus the colors were perfect, absolutely perfect. So there she is in all of her glory. Anyway, I don't think I have anything more to say about this project because I've told you all about it. And when I started on this vlog series, I thought that I would have like 45 minutes of video total, but I had way more than that. So now that I've reached the end, I was planning to do it all as one video. Now that I've reached the end, I think I'll do it in parts. So if you're watching to this point, you will have seen it all in parts. So I'm planning to do it in parts so that it's more more manageable for you to watch at a single time. Otherwise you're going to be like stuck in the middle of a 3.5 hour video. So anyway, Snowy Shawl. This is the inside. In case you wanted to see what the inside looks like, this is the inside. This is the finishing. I'll zoom in on the finishing. So you can see everything is nice and tidy and encased in there. The end is closed up. It just looks good. It looks good from both sides. See if we can focus it on my face again. There we go. So, Snowy Shawl.